Hello and welcome back to the MCU Kill Count. I'm your host Miles and today we're counting down all the kills in 2011's Captain America the First Avenger, the last solo movie about an Avenger before the Avengers. After the more mythic Thor, Captain America brought things literally back to earth with a story set in World War II with only a handful of historical inaccuracies. It may not have been a giga hit by any means, but it was for sure the movie where Marvel started to really hit their stride and pump out seriously good movies almost every time. Audience reaction was about on par with Thor, but that's still shown a steady rise since the low point of The Incredible Hulk. They say that war is death's best friend, so how many kills take place in a movie set during one? Let's get to the count to find out. The movie begins in a massive snowstorm where two men arrive to investigate a mysterious discovery in the form of a huge aircraft poking halfway out of the ice. They drill their way inside and take a look around what looks to be a control room before stumbling across a star-spangled shield and immediately calling in some backup. We then cut to 1942 in Tonsberg, Norway, where Nazi soldiers are attacking a church. Inside, two men are hiding and worrying about something hidden away that they don't want being found. Tonsberg is of course the same place that the frost giants attacked some 1,000 years ago, as we saw in Thor. Man, this village just can't catch a break. They hear the sound of a large vehicle approaching before the wall is broken through, kicking off our kill count by crushing one of the men. The Nazis flood the church, led by Johann Schmidt, played by Hugo Weaving. The surviving tower keeper, played by David Bradley, tells Schmidt he's searching for a legend, and whatever it is they're looking for, it doesn't exist. Schmidt isn't convinced and shoves open the coffin that several men were struggling with moments ago without breaking a sweat. Now it could be that he's super strong, or it could just be some of that Agent Smith power we've got going on. He reaches into the coffin and picks up a glass cube before tossing it to the floor, knowing it's a fake. Schmidt threatens the tower keeper into telling him where the real Tesseract is hidden, and the man gestures towards the wall, displaying interest there, the World Tree we learned all about in Thor. He finds a hidden compartment and opens it, letting out a blinding blue light, which he seems to be pretty fond of, presumably meaning he's found the Tesseract he's been searching for. The tower keeper tells him it's not for men to handle, and he's a fool for trying to control it. Schmidt is unfazed and shoots the tower keeper before ordering his men to open fire on the entire village. That being said, we do only see the tower keeper die, so only one more is added to the count. Over in New York, we catch up with Steve Rogers, played by Chris Evans, an Army enlistment office, being rejected from joining on the grounds of being a little bit of a dweebus and having a laundry list of health issues. As much as he wants to serve his country like his parents, he's just not built for it and would really just be more of a hindrance than he would a help. Later at the theatre, Steve is settling in to watch a movie, but those dang ads are going on forever, all about what you can do for the war effort. One audience member isn't too happy about being advertised to and voices his displeasure. Steve tells him to have some respect and put a sock in it, but as soon as he stands up, it's pretty clear how things are going to end. Cut to outside where Steve gets knocked down, but he gets up again. It seems they're never going to keep him down. He even tries to use a bin lid as a shield, but it's no use, and he again goes down before coming back up for more. And when asked why, we get a catchphrase that will literally haunt him for the rest of his career.
I can do this all day.
Just as it looks like he's done, a very sharply dressed Sebastian Stan appears and literally gives the bullet a kick up the arse, sending him on his way. This is James Bucky Barnes, and as his outfit might suggest, he's a fully fledged sergeant in the army shipping out the next day, but not before one last night with his best pal Steve. They decide to head to the 1943 Stark Expo where they meet two lovely ladies and heading over to watch Stark Sr. show off some of the latest tech. Howard is played by Dominic Cooper in this movie, and this is long before Tony was even a sparkle in his eye, so expect to see him violate all kinds of workplace boundaries, just like his son would some 60 odd years later. He hits the stage to show off his flying car prototype using the early foundations of Repulse tech. As I said, early foundations. Don't expect any Iron Man Senior action from Howie. Steve isn't too interested and heads straight back to yet another recruitment office to try once more to join up and head off to do his part. Bucky catches him and tries to talk him out of it, but Steve cannot be convinced that there is anything more valuable he can do with his life than lay it down to protect those few who are weaker than him. With that, Bucky heads off, taking all the stupid with him to the war to make sure Steve doesn't keep any for himself. As Steve is getting ready for his physical exam, he gets a little bit nervous as the doctor heads out and is replaced by Dr. Abraham Erskine from the Strategic Science Reserve. If you didn't catch it from his accent, Erskine is from Germany originally, but now resides in Queens, New York. He asks Steve why exactly he keeps trying to sign up when he'll clearly not last a second. Steve tells him he doesn't want to kill anyone, but he's not willing to stand down from a bully no matter who they are or where they come from. That seems to satisfy Erskine, who gives him a green stamp approving him as a soldier with a single chance to prove himself. We then cut to a secluded mountain hideout where Schmidt is working with Dr. Arnim Zola on some experimental weapons tech using the Tesseract as a power source. They plug it in and Schmidt turns it up to 11, resulting in some spooky looking lights and sounds, but success, albeit at the cost of some equipment. Zola says the energy they have collected from the Tesseract will power machines which will change the course of the war, but Schmidt is aiming just a little bit higher and hopes to completely change the world. Back in the USA, we're at Camp Lee, where Steve is starting his basic training under the command of Agent Peggy Carter and Colonel Phillips, played by Haley Atwell and Tommy Lee Jones respectively. The Colonel explains their goal is to create the best army in history by creating super soldiers from the best recruits they can find. As we watch a montage of Steve struggling his way through basic training. The final exercise we see is a good bit of fully geared running. The drill sergeant tells the squad that anyone who can get the flag from the top of the pole gets a free ride back to base in the truck, rather than having to run the rest of the way. The squad do their best to climb the pole, but it's hopeless, and they all fall in and get ready to move. Steve, however, makes for the pole and quickly pulls out the pin holding it up, allowing it to fall flat, meaning he can easily grab the flag and hop into the truck. Maybe there is more to this little dude than meets the eye. Later, Phillips and Erskine are discussing Steve, and Erskine explains he's the clear choice despite Phillips' beliefs in his obvious flaws. Phillips prefers Hodge, another soldier who's strong and follows orders, but as Erskine says, he's a bully, so why give him anything? Phillips tries to prove his point by tossing a grenade into the squad, and they all scatter, but one. Of course, Steve leaps straight onto the grenade and tells everyone else to get back, fully prepared to sacrifice himself to save others. Good job it's a dummy grenade, otherwise we'd have a pretty damn short movie. Phillips doesn't look too pleased his experiment seemingly failed, but seems a little bit more convinced of Steve's mettle. Later that night, Steve has been picked for whatever experiment they're running and he's getting some pre-match jeers. Erskine heads over to calm him down and explains why exactly they chose him. The doctor explains how he came to the US and tells the story of Hitler coming to him and his work as a way to make Germany powerful again. After rejecting him, Hydra, the Nazi research division led by Schmidt, came to him and took the unfinished formula by force. It gave Schmidt huge strength but came with some unintended side effects. Side effects that Erskine explained were not only from the serum not being ready, it was also Schmidt himself. The serum amplifies everything the user is on the inside, so someone like Schmidt, who is fueled by greed and a lust for power, became so much worse. But someone like Steve, who is weak and knows compassion and how valuable strength is when used right, will hopefully be a much better candidate. There's really no better way to put it into words than how Erskine himself does it, so I'll let him say it for me.
Not a perfect soldier, but a good man.
Back with Schmidt in his mountain base, Zola visits as he's having his portrait done, and the painter is using a suspiciously large amount of red paint, and he has quite a lack of hair in that silhouette. Anywho, he's managed to track down Erskine, and they plan to take him and the serum off the table, leaving the US with no defense against their new power. The next day, Steve is en route to the procedure and points out all the places he's been beaten up in to Agent Carter. He then proceeds to completely fumble the bag when trying to speak to a woman. Then again, he hasn't really got the most experience in that area. They stop the car and head through an antique shop where Carter and the owner exchange some secret codes before proceeding into a secret hidden military facility. There they meet Erskine, who tells Steve to strip off some clothes to get ready for the procedure. In the observation box, Colonel Phillips is waiting with a few government officials like Senator Brandt and his colleague from the State Department, anxious to see what happens and how they can use it. Steve lies down on the machine as Howard Stark arrives to assist the doctor in powering whatever this machine is. Erskine switches on a microphone and explains how exactly the process will work. After a quick shot of penicillin, they're ready to begin. The serum goes in and the machine closes around Steve just as he realizes he forgot to pee. Too late for that, so they proceed onto the Vita rays to stimulate cell growth as a blinding light floods the chamber. Steve can be heard screaming from within and they begin to shut it down, but he tells them to keep going through to the end, and with a couple of pops and sparks, they're all done and the chamber opens to reveal the real Captain America. Obviously, I need to touch on the insane shrinkage they did to Chris Evans for this movie. Instead of going full Christian Bale and dropping half his body weight and height for the sake of a few scenes, they instead went the CG route and used a whole list of different tricks like body doubles, manually shrinking Chris, and sometimes full CGI. The body double they used is actually Englishman Leander Dini, and you have to love that dry, self-aware take on his role in the movie.
And he needs to be a scrawny loser. That's where I come in.
All I know is it looks pretty damn convincing to me, and is especially impressive given how long ago the movie was made. That being said, I'm not sure what's more impressive, the fact they managed to make Chris Evans look so tiny, or the fact that he's that shredded to begin with. Anywho, the experiment was a success, and he steps out to the crowd of astonished onlookers, including a very interested Peggy Carter, but also including a very suspicious looking State Department worker familiar, and Beans left his cigar case in the observation booth. Erskine spots him, but it's too late, as he explodes the booth, grabs the serum, shoots the good doctor, and hurries away before anyone can react. Steve rushes to the dying doctor's side, who can only point to his extremely muscular chest before dying, leading a very angry Steve to set off after the killer. Agent Carter is also in hot pursuit and manages to tag the killer in the arm, as well as take out his escape driver, before stopping in the middle of the road to line up a shot on the man himself. She doesn't quite hit her target and is tackled to safety by Steve just before she's run over. Steve starts after the car, and with his newfound stature and enhanced strength and speed, he keeps up with the speeding vehicle, even with a few mishaps here and there. He closes the distance and manages to land himself on top of the car, where he narrowly avoids taking a bullet as the car crashes out of control. After escaping the wreck, the killer fires a few shots at Steve, who blocks them using the car door as an improvised shield. The killer grabs a nearby child as a hostage and continues his escape towards the docks. Steve corners the man who's all out of bullets and tosses the kid into the water as a last resort. The kid can swim just fine, so Steve continues his pursuit, where the man climbs into a solo submarine and makes for a getaway, but somehow is caught up to by Steve, who launches him back to the surface before asking him who he works for. The man pops an unalive pill and says "Hail Hydra" before dying rather than being interrogated. Back in Schmidt's base, some Nazi higher-ups are there asking questions about where his work is going. He explains to them what he's doing, but they just think he's gone off the deep end and he's completely mad. And to be honest, they're probably not wrong. One of them finds a map listing his targets and Berlin is on it, showing he's not fighting for anyone but himself anymore. They berate him, but he simply fires up a Tesseract-powered weapon and vaporizes them all where they stand, adding 3 more kills to the count in the process. Zola looks a little bit shaken by this, but hails Hydra all the same, knowing he'll likely face the same fate otherwise. Back with Steve, they're taking a whole bunch of his blood since it now holds the last trace of Erskine's formula. Wait, did he not write anything down or work with any other person? Now I get it's important, and it's secret, and he's had it stolen before. But really, I wrote down the recipe for my pulled chicken so I don't forget. You telling me the super secret, super soldier, super serum was just in his head? Really? Anywho, the colonel is arguing with the senator about how this happened since the senator literally brought him along with him. For some reason, they dropped that in seconds to ask Howard how the sub, Heinz, which apparently is the killer's name, was using to escape works, and he hasn't a clue, showing how far behind the US is from Germany, or more accurately, Hydra. The SSR is moving swiftly on from experimentation and are taking the fight directly to Hydra. Steve begs to go with them, but is written off as an experiment. The senator pulls him aside and says there is another path to serve his country, one that many would consider to be unnatural. Cut to Steve on stage with a musical backing troupe attempting to sell war bonds to help the war effort. If you're like me and you have no idea what war bonds actually are, from what I can tell, it's essentially loaning your money to the government during wartime as a way to avoid massive raises in taxes whilst also reducing inflation. I don't know man, I'm not an economist. Either way, cut to another montage of Steve touring the country promoting the war effort any way he can. Be it making promotional movies, dancing around on stage, or even punching a fake Hitler in the face, which is then printed on comics in the first issue of Captain America. This is an actual comic that was made in 1941, and it is pretty much for the same reasons. Get people on side of a new character by having him beat the biggest asshat around at the time. Works every time. Now, as much fun as it is to be the star-spangled man of a plan, we can tell that Steve would much rather be doing his part a lot more practically, especially when he's getting berated and barraged with fruit when performing for actual soldiers. After the aforementioned fruit slinging, he's hanging around backstage, sketching how it feels to be a children's entertainer, aka a YouTuber, when Agent Carter creeps up on him asking how he's enjoying the life of a promoter. He's obviously not best pleased and shares how much he longs to help out the soldiers all around him, rather than dance around on stage or be a lab rat. Carter lets slip that they're with the same unit Bucky was with and that most of them has been wiped out, leading Steve to check if he's one of the casualties. It looks like he is, or he's been captured. Either way, he's not coming back. Steve has to know for sure, so gears up to go get him back. Agent Carter follows him to offer some assistance, along with Stark to drop him off as close as they can get him. Just as he's questioning the late-night cheese-eating habits of Howie and Peggy, they run into some anti-air, so he orders them to turn around as he leaps from the plane into the woods below. And if you're wondering why someone with essentially no military rank is tossed around orders to higher-ranking agents,
You can't give me orders!
The hell I can! I'm a captain!
as good a reason as any. Back with Schmidt, they're mass-producing their weapons using a bit of good old-fashioned slave labour, and again, Zola looks pretty displeased with the lengths and methods Schmidt is choosing to go to. Back with Steve, somehow he's managed to get to the doorstep of the facility and hops in the back of an entering truck to sneak in, only to be met by a couple of Hydra guards. He quickly dispatches them with what sounds like non-lethal methods, so no more for the count just yet. He manages to ride his way into the base and sneaks his way into the main building, stealing a sample of the weapons tech in the process. Eventually, he finds his way to the prisoners, calling himself Captain America and tossing them the keys to escape. On the way out, we see 7 prisoners and 4 Hydra soldiers go down from some combination of gunshots or beatings. Schmidt sees all of this happening on the security cameras and sounds the base's alarm. The prisoners storm the main building, and we get a few more for the count. 2 Hydra soldiers get shot right off the bat, and then we see 4 bodies. 1 Hydra, 3 prisoners on the security cameras, as Schmidt notices a star-spangled shield wielder kicking some Hydra ass, but it doesn't like he's putting anyone down for good. Seeing how easily he's cutting through their security, Schmidt initiates the base's self-destruct sequence and sends Zola to prepare their escape route. Steve fights his way to the upper levels, where he sends one unlucky Hydra guard flying over a high railing, likely to his death, landing his first kill on the count. Back outside, the prisoners are continuing their escape/riot and take out a few more Hydra guards on the way. We see 2 vaporized and another get shot. Then 4 go down to grenades. Back inside, Schmidt is securing the Tesseract for transport as Zola collects his work and makes his escape. Cap sees him leave his office, but rather than chase after him, heads inside to find Bucky strapped to a table. He's a little worse for wear and disorientated, but alive, and very surprised to see a very different looking Steve there to rescue him. Cap frees him and they get to looking around for an exit as Bucky processes his best buddy's new stature. They make their way to the upper levels just as the self-destruct sequence goes off, leaving them nowhere to go but up, directly towards Schmidt and Zola. Schmidt and Cap meet on the bridge and trade a few blows, both verbal and otherwise, before Zola separates the two with the bridge controls. It seems some of the damage may already be done, since Schmidt's eyes look a little bit wonky after being punched. Never mind, it turns out that Hugo Weaving's face was actually masked all along, and Schmidt was transformed into the Red Skull after taking the serum. Fun fact, when Joe Simon was thinking up villains for Captain America to fight, he went and had a hot fudge sundae, and when he saw the cherry on top, the image of the Red Skull just popped into his head. He expected him to last for an issue or two like most villains do, but he was such a hit, he became a staple of Cap's rogues gallery for years. Stats-wise, he and Cap are basically the same. The only difference is the juice Cap used was a lot more complete, hence no horrific deformities. He tries to persuade Cap over to his side of thinking by saying they're ascended beyond humanity and could rule over everyone, but that sounds like some bully speak, and we all know how Cap feels about bullies. Red Skull and Zola make their way to the roof, where Red will make his escape via the, according to the wiki, Fokker Wolf Triebflügel, leaving Zola behind to use his supercar. Cap and Bucky meanwhile climb even higher and take turns climbing across to the other side. Bucky goes first and just about makes it before the girder he's balancing on falls into the flames. With no other choice, Steve clears the way and takes a leap just as the final explosions go off. And we cut to Colonel Phillips drafting a letter to alert Senator Brandt that Steve has been killed in action. Agent Carter arrives and lets him know the base is completely dark before being berated for losing America's golden goose and going against direct orders. Just as he's gearing up for a proper bollocking, they notice a commotion outside and go to see what it's all about. Lo and behold, it's the group of escaped prisoners being led by none other than Stephen G. Rogers, KIA. Turns out the transponder Stark gave him to call for help took a few hits, so wasn't able to get any evac. But nevertheless, they made it back to base, all thanks to Captain America. Senator Brandt is even going to present him with a Medal of Valor, but when he comes out to claim it, he looks all different again.
I thought he'd be taller.
You're not wrong, Stan, this serum is doing some weird things to the dude. Back in London, Cap is passing on all the intel he gathered from the base, including locations of other Hydra bases on the map. The Colonel wants him to go back in and take each one out, but of course, not alone. For that, he'll need a team. Of course, he wants the prisoners he escaped with last time, so they all agree and form a team known as the Howling Commandos to wipe Hydra from the map, on the condition that Cap keeps buying him drinks. The Commandos were originally a separate comic book team to Cap that collaborated every now and then with the man himself. Of course, each of them has their own skill set and personalities, but the one I want to draw attention to is James Falsworth, who, in the comics, goes on to become Union Jack, who is essentially the British version of Captain America. Oh, and the barman they're getting their drinks from, that's Leon Dini again, the body double for Skinny Steve, having a little extra cameo for his efforts. Of course, Bucky can't turn down working with his best pal and signs on as long as Steve considers keeping the suit. Just as they're putting together a plan, Agent Carter walks in wearing high heels and a red dress, and Steve, he has to catch his breath. Carter pretty obviously has some feelings for Steve, being unable to look away from him even when Bucky tries inviting her to dance, in quite the role reversal from the start of the movie. A feeling not lost on either of the pair. In the movie, whilst Bucky is somewhat of a second-in-command to Cap, in the classic comics he was basically Robin to Cap's Batman and was pretty much a kid who wore his own suit. They decided to stick with a more realistic portrayal of having some of the more modern comic versions of Bucky, who was more willing to do the dirty work and let Cap stay pure as a symbol of a hero. The next morning, Howard is investigating the Hydra weapons sample with some pretty explosive results. Steve turns up to discuss some potential new gear, and while he's waiting gets pretty aggressively hit on and pulled into a smooch just as Agent Carter pops around the corner to bring him in. He desperately tries to worm his way out of trouble by deflecting that Carter and Stark have been fonduing each other anyway, so why does it matter? Stark explains that fondue is in fact cheese, and Carter hasn't the slightest interest in him in that way, so yeah, Steve is pretty far up shit creek with no paddle in sight with regards to romance. Anywho, Stark gets to show Cap some enhanced gear he can use to give him another edge in combat, including a number of shield prototypes. Cap takes a liking to a rather plain circular design that just so happens to be made from the only vibranium they have access to, making it light, expensive, and almost indestructible. To prove that point, Carter takes some shots at it, and they don't even make a scratch, though looking at the faces of Steve and Stark, there may have been some mess made elsewhere after this. Cap passes along some design ideas for his outfit, and the next scene we see him gearing up to take down Hydra in the good old-fashioned red, white, and blue. When designing the suit for the movie, they wanted to stay to the tried and true formula that he's been wearing in the comics for years, but bring it into something more realistic for use in war. The stage suit is actually a much more accurate representation of his 40s comic suit, and this final form is that combined with the cutting-edge gear of World War II protective wear. Personally, I think it looks great as something that is actually practical, while still being that classic icon of America. We get a montage of him and the Howling Commandos taking out the Hydra bases, and thank God all the focus is on them, and we see no more kills. Those battle scenes get really hard really fast, okay? Also look at this face that Bucky pulls while firing his gun. Scratch that, we've got at least 2 kills when they blow up a tank. We saw earlier that 2 men were needed to keep them moving, so we can safely assume that there were at least 2 Hydra goons inside, manning the controls, and likely not surviving that. Bucky takes out another goon going for a flank on Cap during a separate mission. Then we get another chaotic battle scene in the dark where we see 9 background bodies, 7 Hydra and 2 USA, and I don't even know what you want me to do here, man. It's a tank the size of a house. One guy's pulled out and tossed down a few stories, so we can count him straight away. Then I'm going to go with 5 Hydra soldiers, since we probably need 2 drivers. Then we see the main gun and 2 sets of side guns, so it's at least that many. Now, in my defense, the Uber tank doesn't exist, so it's kind of hard to guess how many people it would take to drive it. Red Skull obviously isn't too pleased about all this disruption to his plans, as him and Zola tour a destroyed facility with another 3 background Hydra bodies. And we get one more to the count when Red executes the sole survivor of the attack for his failures. Back with the commandos, we see them preparing to intercept a Hydra train via a fairly insane zipline plan. Cap, Bucky and Gabe, one of the commandos, land on the train and move towards the front to break in. Once inside, they keep moving forward and get separated, with Bucky dealing with several Hydra goons and Cap being up against just one with some enhanced Tesseract weaponry. Cap dispatches him pretty quickly and moves towards Bucky to regroup, and they take out the last goon, meaning 3 more kills on the count for Bucky. Just as they're celebrating their victory, the enhanced goon gets back up and blows a hole in the side of the train, sending the pair and the shield clattering to the floor. Bucky grabs it and fires on the goon, only to be sent flying to the outside. Cap takes the goon down for the count and moves to rescue Bucky, only for him to fall to his supposed doom at the last second before being pulled to safety. Damn, into the ice too. No worse time to be a soldier than in the winter. Cap is obviously devastated, but nevertheless they complete the mission and secure Zola for the Allies. Back in the UK, he's brought into an interrogation room where he's joined by Colonel Phillips and some dinner, who's curious why he hasn't popped a pill like the rest of the Hydra captives. They've also leaked they have him and that he's fully cooperating, so now he's screwed either way. If he goes back to Red Skull, he's dead, so it's now work with the Allies or die. And I know which I'd rather go for. Zola tells the Colonel that Red has a plan to wipe pretty much every capital off the face of the Earth and take full control as world leader, and that he has the power to do it with Higgs technology. Technology in the form of the Valkyrie, a gigantic warship. Back with Steve, he's brooding in a ruined bar, doing his best to get drunk through his accelerated metabolism. Peggy drops by to give him some comforting words about Bucky's death, and they begin to plan taking down Skull and the rest of Hydra for good. They join with the Colonel and Stark, and it seems the only way into the final Hydra facility is straight through the front door. Since no one has any better ideas, that's the plan they set to work putting in motion. Cap rides his way in by motorcycle and is quickly pursued by a group of Hydra goons. He manages to use a variety of gadgets to dispatch them, some non-lethal, like a clothesline from hell, and some more lethal, like a flamethrower or a grenade. All in all, we see 3 more kills for the count. Finally, he makes it to the front gate and blows up another tank before jumping inside. Once in, we see 3 guards seemingly fall over in sheer awe of Cap, but no more kills as he fights his way towards the entrance. He ditches the bike and walks through the security with ease and non-lethal methods before being cornered by 2 flamethrower wielders and completely surrounded. Once captured, he's taken directly to Red Skull, who lectures him on arrogance before asking what makes him so special to be Captain America, to which he replies, nothing. We get a call back.
I can do this all day.
Before Red pulls a gun on Cap and prepares to execute him. Just before he can fire, he notices the commandos ziplining their way into his base. He fires, but Cap manages to pull one of the guards in the way of the shot to stay alive. The commandos land and begin firing on the room full of guards, taking out 11 with gunfire. Red flees with Cap in hot pursuit as the commandos continue their attack, now being backed up by a full assault team under the command of the Colonel. We see 4 more Hydra goons go down to gunfire, taking 3 USA soldiers with them, 2 inside, 1 outside. One of the commandos, Dum Dum Dugan, uses one of the Hydra weapons back on them and gives them a taste of being vaporized, taking out a couple more as they move in. Back outside, Carter is moving in with the assault team, and we see 6 USA soldiers get vaporized in the chaos, but I believe 24 Hydra goons get either shot or blown up. So, a pretty good KDA. They breach inside the base, but Red grabs a Tesseract weapon and takes out 4 more soldiers. Meanwhile, the Colonel has breached elsewhere, and him and his team take out 4 Hydra goons to stay in the lead. Cap catches up to the Red Skull and blocks his pot shots and tosses his shield to prop open a door and stay on his tail. But it's more of the fire lad from earlier. Not to worry, Peggy shows up and shoots him in the tank from behind, putting him down for good. After a very brief romantic distraction, Cap continues his pursuit. Red manages to board the Valkyrie, but 3 Hydra goons on his tail aren't quite as lucky and are taken out on the ladder by the soldiers. Red starts the launch sequence, seemingly piloting the thing all by himself. As unlikely as that seems, it makes my job so much easier, so we're gonna go with that. Cap sees the craft taking off, as well as the massive battle between him and it, and rushes onwards to stay on his tail. During his trip across the battle, we see, I believe, 4 allied soldiers and 6 Hydra soldiers go down. Cap makes it through and sets off sprinting after it, but it's no use. Not even he can run faster than a plane. Lucky for him, the Colonel and Peggy are there in Red's supercar to give him a lift. With a pedal to the metal and some high-tech nitro boost, they just about manage to get close enough on the world's longest runway. With a good luck kiss from Peggy and a crushing rejection from the Colonel, Cap leaps onto the landing gear and makes his way on board as the car just about manages to stop shy of the cliff edge. Once inside, Cap sneaks his way towards the control room, but not before seeing the attack crafts, each with American major cities as their targets. The pilots arrive to set off, and Cap manages to dispatch 2 of them by tossing them out of some drop doors to their deaths. One gets in the ship and initiates a launch sequence, so Cap leaps on board to stop him, losing his shield in the process, only to be grabbed by the final remaining pilot. The craft falls from the Valkyrie and the pilot begins twisting and turning to shake off his unwanted guest, but only succeeds in taking out his colleague and giving us possibly the most violent and gruesome death in the MCU so far. Cap somehow manages to open the pod and ejects the pilot, but he does use the actual eject seat, so I think we can assume this pilot will survive since they come with parachutes in most cases. He then pilots the craft back towards the Valkyrie where Red sees him coming and activates the anti-air defenses. He takes some hits but manages to crash land back on board where he regains his shield and makes his way to the control room. He approaches the main chair only to find it empty, with Red waiting behind him with a Tesseract rifle. He blocks the first shot and rushes Red, knocking the weapon from his hands and getting into an evenly matched hand-to-hand fight. They go back and forth and manage to send the craft into a free fall, sending them flying through the air in 0 Gs. Red activates the autopilot and they come crashing back to the ground. He fires at Cap with his Tesseract pistol as Cap makes his way towards the shield, as they have a battle of ideologies. Red wants to ascend above nations and rule the entire world, and obviously, that's not going to fly with Captain America. He leaps for his shield, blocks a final shot, and then sends it flying into Red, who's knocked into the Tesseract containment device, which then sends that spooky blue magic flying through the air again. Red picks up the loose Tesseract and a portal opens above him, showing deep space. The energy seemingly burns Red up and he disappears in a way not dissimilar to the Bifrost from Thor, leaving the Tesseract on the ground, where it burns through the bottom of the ship to the earth below. Cap takes control of the craft and gets in contact with the control tower, letting him know Red is taken care of and he's in control. Carter tries to form a plan for him to land safely, but the Valkyrie is too damaged, so it's going to have to go down hard in the water. Carter tears up as she realizes what he's going to do, and Cap sends the craft into a nosedive towards the ice. He tells her he's going to struggle to make their dance, and they make doomed plans for the following week to make up for it, as the ground gets closer and closer, and contact is cut off for good. We see he succeeded in his mission, and the ship went down hard into the ice, where it would stay until the start of the movie. Back in England, we see a celebration for the end of the war as the commandos honour their fallen brothers. On a search mission, Howard's team find the Tesseract, but no one cares as they keep up the search for Steve. We see Carter pine for her lost love, and children playing in the streets dressed as Captain America, and cut to black, before Steve wakes up seemingly in a hospital with baseball on the radio, and an agent coming in to check on him. She tells him he's recovering in New York, but he doesn't buy it. Turns out that baseball game on the radio is from a game that he saw live, so he knows he's being lied to. Just as an aside, really? You can recover him, and nurse him back to health, and keep all of these world secrets, but no one could be bothered getting a baseball game from after he went into the ice? Really? Anywho, the agent presses a silence alarm and 2 guards walk in. They're swiftly thrown through a wall as Cap makes his escape from a much more modern looking facility. He makes his way out onto the street and is in the modern day New York City, where Nick Fury greets him. He explains that he's been in the ice for 70 years, and of course the only thing Cap cares about is that he missed his date with Carter, in an ending that honestly gives me chills every time.
Yeah, I had a date.
The credits roll for our post scene with him beating the sand out of some punching bags when Fury comes to him with a mission to save the world. We get quite possibly the cheesiest trailer I've seen for a modern movie for the Avengers, but that's coming next time, so we're leaving it here for now. Now Cap might have beaten a Red Skull this time, but how many kills did everyone pick up along the way? Well, follow me to the numbers and you'll find out, because I can count these all day. 140 people died in Captain America the First Avenger, and since it's World War II, it only really makes sense that all of them were male, leaving us with an entirely blue tower. That also means we have another leader in our movies leaderboard, with Cap beating out Thor by only 4 kills, to take the top spot. Who knows how long he'll hold on to it. Going over to our heroes and villains leaderboard, we see Cap is nestling himself into 5th place with 1 more kill than Hulk, and Red Skull is just below him with 3 less than the big guy. The Platinum Punisher for best kill is absolutely going to the Hydra pilot who gets turned into a fine mist from the propeller blades. It's the most gore in the series so far and honestly won't be topped for quite a while, so I just have to pick it. The Broken Bone Claws for lamest kill can go to one of the background bodies during the final assault. At least show me them going down so I have some context. And the Seal of Worthiness for the most heroic moment has to be Dweeber Steve jumping onto the fake grenade. Yes, I know at the end he does a self-sacrifice, and yes, I know it wasn't real, and there was no danger, but this little guy from Brooklyn dove onto what he thought was a real grenade to save a bunch of people who were mainly just bullying him. That's why he got the good juice. He was a hero before he got jacked. Next time we have the Avengers, where we'll see all of our heroes team up for the very first time, so subscribe because you're not going to want to miss it. That's all from me on today's kill count. Thank you very much for watching, hope you enjoyed, I'll see you on the next one, and have a super rest of your day.